Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun runs north to south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby. Give it to me. I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Describe where we are. We got to talk about camps first. Dan and I did a podcast when we were down here for his camp.
Okay.
But talk about the camps that you do. And I'll use a good friend of mine as an example, Steve. You met him in Whitefish,
Yeah.
and he came to another one of your camps. I think it was in Arizona.
He came to a seminar, which is just a 2-day event at a school, and we got to hang out and watch the UFC together. So that was cool. And
But he was the kind of guy who, for years, had heard me talking about training with you, and he'd text me like, "So, like, what's the Henry seminar like? What's it like?" I'm like, "It's awesome. You should come up." So he was coming up for the grand opening.
Yeah.
Came to your 2-day same thing seminar in Whitefish.
Right.
And then heard I was coming out here. He's like, "So, what is this camp in Costa Rica?" So I think he's actually planning on coming out next year. But that all started with listening to people, you talking about it, or you, Dan, talking about your camp. So I would say the best thing we could do is have you explain it in your own words, where we are and what we're doing.
The camp is a completely different experience than a seminar, right? So a seminar is usually like we go out, I'll go to a location for 2 days and teach 2 days for a couple hours. But the camp experience is so much more immersive where, so for example, we're in Costa Rica. It's fucking paradise here. We're literally on the beach in Tamarindo. It's hot as balls, but you know,
beautiful.
It's literally paradise. We're staying at a mansion on the beach, 10-bedroom,
The ocean's 50 feet behind the camera.
11 bathroom
People be able to hear it just a touch, and like the birds and macaws and stuff.
mansion on the beach with other attendees, other people who are attending the camp, with a private chef every morning doing us basically a feast. So we're definitely living it up, and then we get a little bit of training in every day, a couple hours of training in the morning.
How do you decide what you're going to teach?
Sometimes it's based on different people messaging me in and saying like, hey, you know, I would love to learn this. I would love, so I'm always open to suggestions. For me as a teacher, it's always helpful for me because I see it as my purpose. I'm there to serve. I'm there to help people, wherever they're at in their jiu-jitsu. But the idea that for this camp specifically came up just from training with a lot of black belts and higher level belts the last year. And one of the things that I noticed in a lot of people's games is just their lack of understanding and ability of the attack, of how to attack.
Do you think that's because they're afraid to lose position?
I think it has to do with multiple things. I think it's not that they're afraid to lose position. I think that when they attack, they don't know how to maintain position. And so if you don't know how to control the position as you're attacking, there's just a huge potential for the person to get out. And so they don't know how to be stable in their positions when they attack. And I think the other aspect is when someone starts to defend, people end up giving up. So they go to attack, they feel like the person's resisting or defending, and then they feel like they stop and they have to try something else. So they really don't have the understanding of how to break down defenses and how to transition attacks so that when you, like how to combine attacks and layer attacks together so that when they start to defend, it basically creates the opportunity for something else. So they don't know how to follow it up. Yeah, I think that's a major thing. And it makes sense to me because usually in a person's jiu-jitsu career, that is kind of the last aspect to develop. You know,
The attack.
The attack, because when you first start out, you're just learning how to survive, right? You're just learning how to stay safe and survive and like just not get submitted.
What's happening to me?
Exactly. It's like panic mode and it's just like, oh shit, everyone's better than you. And then eventually you start being able to survive long enough that you're like, okay, now I can start to escape. You're buying yourself enough time, you start to get out of bad positions. And then the next thing you do is after you're out of a bad position, you start to get into good positions. And then once you get into good positions, you know, in the beginning, you get into a good position and you lose it right away. But eventually you learn how to stabilize and hold those good positions. And so the attack is kind of the last thing. The finish is kind of the last thing. And it's how we finish fights. It's how we end fights. And so it's kind of the last thing for most people that develops their last kind of layer of the game. So,
do you like camps better or 2-day seminars?
For me, I feel that people that attend the camps get the greatest value, because usually with every camp I have a theme. And with the themes, I get to spend 4 to 6 days with someone, depending on how long the camp is, focusing on that one topic and just doing a crazy deep dive. And when I get to spend 4 days with someone, man, I literally can take people's games to the next level. And it's not just from what I observe, it's also from feedback that I've gotten from people that have come to my camps and they've gone back to their schools, and they'll literally message me and they're like, dude, I'm literally killing everyone at my school now. Or, man, whatever this I was struggling with before, now it's so easy for me. I just have such a better understanding of. So I think value-wise, as in being able to really help people progress the most in their game, camps are the best. Yeah. The other thing too is, like, at these camps, we're hanging out. Everyone's hanging out with each other, and so besides just spending time together during the training, everyone's going out having dinner together. And that obviously comes, one of the main topics that comes up is jiu-jitsu. So people get to pick my brains when we're out to dinner or going out to eat and stuff like that about just strategy, philosophy, because that's the other thing with jiu-jitsu is, once you learn the techniques in jiu-jitsu, the next level is really understanding how to use the tools in a system. That's what really makes jiu-jitsu work, the strategy. And that's something that people don't talk about a lot. It's one thing to have the tool, it's the other thing to know how to use everything in combination with each other so that it works as a system.
Yeah. Before we get into the $43 million question of the day, which we need to discuss. Actually, two things. Your next camp is in Sedona.
I haven't even announced it yet, but yeah.
Technically, you still haven't, because this comes out Friday and it's only Wednesday.
So, I always try to outdo myself on these events, man. And I have a good friend who's a winemaker. So a lot of people
plays a little music in his off time, though.
Plays
right?
a little bit of music. He's a mediocre musician, but a phenomenal winemaker. And so he's got a place out in it. So it's Jerome / Cottonwood / Sedona. So if people that have never been to that part of Arizona, it's just breathtakingly beautiful. But it's also wine country. It's also wine country for Arizona. And so I was thinking, because so many people, when they come to these camps, they like to bring their significant other. The idea for me always was, when I was doing these camps, is people love to go on vacation. They want to travel and they want to see other parts of the world. And people are so passionate about jiu-jitsu. Like, how do we combine these two passions? How do we combine it so that they get a little bit of training? Because people are going to spend money to go on vacation anyways. But it's always nice to get some training and not feel like, oh man, I'm gone a week and I'm getting rusty. So so I always look for these amazing destination places, like where we're at now in Costa Rica.
The first one was, I looked, because you said the other day you thought it was 9 or 10 years. It was 2014 was the first time you did a camp down here. So
Okay,
this
so
is the 10th year.
Yeah. 10th year.
See how his mic is down on his shirt? Henry, move your mic down on your shirt, just in case it's rubbing. You don't want it to rub.
Like Denver's.
Like Denver's. His beard, though. I don't know how you have a lavalier mic and a beard, and it's just not all the time. Just so
back down. Is that right?
let me see. That looks perfect to me. All right, so when is it in Sedona?
September 20th to the 23rd. It's a very specific time because it's basically just after the crush, where they're crushing all the grapes and basically putting all the wine. So it's pretty cool. We got 2 amazing dinners planned. One of the restaurants that's hosting the dinner is basically like farm to table. Everything is grown locally,
awesome.
Fresh, so farm to table, with all the wine that's grown locally in that region and made locally in that region. So it's just after the crush, when he's like barreling everything and putting everything into the like French oak. So just after that, and then after that, he's got to play with some band called Metallica or something like that on stage. So the next week doesn't work out. He really wanted to be there for the event, and so I said, you know what, I'll make it happen for you.
His wine is spectacular. I've been a member of his wine club for like 2 years. It is some of the best wine I've ever had.
Yeah.
For sure.
I spent Thanksgiving with him 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now. And between me and Jess, my girl, him and his girl, and another couple that were there, we put out 16 bottles of wine. Because he was just like, oh, no, you got to try this. And try it with this. Have it with this cheese.
How was the next day?
Huh?
How was the next day?
That's the thing. I was going to say at the 12th bottle, but it's long before then. How much of it are you really tasting? Like, my palate's definitely refining more as we just guzzle more of these bottles.
It was just so delicious that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of beautiful locations, you and Leah have something on the calendar, which happens to be a bucket list location, which is why when the idea came up, I was like, oh, I'm going. And you need to talk about it because I think there's only like 6 slots left.
Yeah, they've already started going pretty fast. So it's right after Henry's camp. Starts the 28th of September to October 5th. We're going to Ireland, staying in a cool castle. And the guy who's planning the event for Leah and I's got like events the whole day, everything a little bit different than we do it down here. But I mean, we put it up, and I think before Leah and I had even made a post, he already was able to sell a fair amount of spots. And you know, Mickey, who's one of my students, signed up today or yesterday. So yeah, I think there's like 6 spots left.
And I think they're only individual at this point because they were offering couples, but that shit's already gone.
Yeah, it went quick. So
yeah.
I'm super pumped to, you know, go to Ireland and get to teach with Leah. And, you know, we've got a theme of resilience. So we're going to go over positional escapes and submission escapes, work together on that to put together a cool curriculum for everybody. And super excited about it. I know we were talking about maybe going out early, but I think now with Henry's camp, we'll probably hit that and then go out and then stay later.
That ends up being like a month, and I'm so here for it.
That's and then the weekend after, there's an event going on at the Indio Polo Fields with Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, and Ozzy Osbourne, and Metallica, and some other band that's
starts with a T, ends with
playing
Ool.
that night. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you and Maynard first meet?
So we started training at Rickson's together in like 1995.
He just rolled in one day.
Yeah, he was actually training there before me, but just like probably weeks before I came.
Do you happen to know how he found it?
You know what? He has always been inclined to. His dad's a wrestling coach, right? And he grew up wrestling. So he always kind of understood the effectiveness of grappling, and I think just from watching the UFCs, he was like, okay, that's.
I love that
that's
video
the
where
shit.
he drops Sayanaki's a guy and then just keeps singing the whole time.
Yeah, have you seen that?
I have.
I
It's
think
a
that
boss
was
move.
in Germany where he did the hip throw. The guy went to hug to hip throw, to take the back to rear naked choke, pick it back up the mic, and let me finish.
It was kind of a boss move. Speaking of hip throws onto the head. Okay. So, I've never owned a gym. I would not consider myself to be a high-level practitioner, but I would consider both of you to be. And I saw many posts and many articles, and to people who don't follow jiu-jitsu or don't care about jiu-jitsu, you're probably going to be epically bored by the conversation we're about to have. But I think it has more interesting to me is the business implications, actually. There was a student that there was... Did you ever hear the actual description of the injury? Was it a broken neck?
I did read it at one time. It was several, I don't know if it was broken vertebrae or something, but I mean, I've seen the scar in one of the pictures of the operation he got. So, I mean, he was rendered paralyzed and quadriplegic at first.
So he goes into a jiu-jitsu gym. I'm sure we'll talk about what his grappling background was or what should even be expected in an academy. Goes in, was doing a roll with, I believe, the head black belt instructor. He leaves that mat paralyzed, at least at that time, and the verdict was what, 43 million?
Yeah.
6, right?
Or 46, somewhere between 43 to 46.
After 20, I'm not sure that it matters that much.
I also would like to see any jiu-jitsu black belt have $46 million to actually
Well,
be able to pay in the first place, right? So it's kind
And
of
nobody has a $50 million umbrella anyway.
100%.
So.
But there was a furor, just a heated discussion in the jiu-jitsu world. And you've had your own academy. I know you obviously travel, you do seminars. You were the head instructor at Rickson's Academy for a long time. You have Alpha BJJ. You're one of Henry's black belt. You have a business now, because they were talking about things like waivers, drop-in students. What was described on the video was man gets spiked on his head. And again, this is where I'm not an expert, and I have watched the video. I didn't see anybody get spiked on their head. I thought I was going to see like a suplex over the back to like a head folding forward. Not that, I mean, it did obviously do substantial neck injury, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm curious, both of your thoughts on just the overall situation and the potential implications for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of parts to this. I mean, so I first saw Henner's post, you know, and it used the word spiked. And after reading it, I thought the same thing you did. Okay, you're going to see a video of some black belt, you know, suplexing a guy on his head. And then I know some people that had trained at that academy and a black belt who formerly taught there. And they basically were saying, hey, wait for this video to come out. Somebody leaked the video right away afterwards. And while it's not a move that I teach, it's not a move that I do, not what I was expecting. And then Henner did edit his post and took some accountability. Hey, I guess I used the wrong terminology here, whatever. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that discussion. But, you know, what happened was tragic and horrible for the guy. But, you know, certainly not with intention. I don't think anybody, including Henner, is saying this guy meant ill will towards this student. I mean, I think it's a pretty awful situation, but the long-term implications, while there's no precedence or law that comes from tort law, it still sets the stage for people to be like, oh, I got hurt at this gym, I'm going to try to sue them. And with or without a waiver, I don't know how many times you've been sued or lawsuits. I mean,
so far, zero.
Yeah, so I mean, primarily I work in the hospitality industry and I have a restaurant group. I mean, we have people that like a single step they fall off of, nothing happens, they don't even report it, they go sit down, manager checks on them, they're fine, and 8 months later they sue us for $1 million because they have lasting implications. Now, my insurance company ends up settling with them at some point because it's less expensive to do that than stay in court for years and everything else. So if gym owners start getting all kinds of lawsuits, that either means they get dropped by insurance or nationwide rates start going through the roof. And that's one of my many concerns. You know, I don't know what their waiver was, and no one that I've seen has leaked that yet, but the waiver was inadmissible. So whatever this guy signed, they did not allow in. So one of the things it's caused me to do is take our waivers that we've had, and I have attorney reviewing our waiver right now. And moving forward, when I teach seminars or travel or anything, I'm bringing a digital waiver that, you know, everybody has to do. I
feel like there's a lot of academies having their waivers reviewed right
now. I can
now.
tell you, I mean, I train all over, and I almost never get asked to sign a waiver.
Yeah. A lot of schools I know will have people sign a waiver when they come in, but I mean, the other thing too is as this situation shows, is like there's certain terminology that you need to have in the waiver, right? And so I think, I mean, obviously that's a good thing because legally it seems like the courts are going to accept some things, and so it's just not any handwritten like I
won't sue you.
I won't sue. Yeah, it's you know, so it definitely is a good thing. I think that people are actually getting a legitimate waiver. I mean, at the end of the day, we're training a martial art, and the martial arts is supposed to train you to be able to deal with one of the most violent and dangerous situations you'll ever encounter in your life. And so there's always going to be some level of danger if you want to be able to simulate and be able to really be comfortable in these environments, in these situations.
Have you ever seen anything like this, an injury like this in your 25, 27 years of training?
How would you describe what happened? Because I watched it, and honestly, I still don't understand the mechanism of exactly what happened.
I've been training for 28 years. I've hurt my neck once in training where it was super stiff for a few weeks, never needed surgery. And literally, man, it was a freak accident is what I saw. And when I looked at the footage again, what happened was the way that he posted his head and the very specific angle that he had posted, you couldn't see based on the footage because it was from the back view, but the only thing I can think is that his head was tucked underneath his body. It wasn't like forward, so that when they rolled, his head didn't turn and go over his shoulder. The pressure went into his neck. Now, you know, when you hear about someone getting spiked on their head or spiked on their neck, if you guys watch the Kevin Randleman Fedor fight, have you ever seen that fight?
Yeah.
He gets suplexed.
You're talking
like,
straight standing to his head?
Up, suplexed by Kevin Randleman, who's a like Olympic level wrestler, and slammed straight on his neck.
Did it break?
That's
That's
literally
a spike.
6 foot high, 6 or 7 foot high over the shoulder onto your neck. Now, of course, they're on canvas, but I would assume that the mats are probably softer and have a little bit more give than a canvas ring, even though those are spring loaded, but literally flat on his neck. And he rolls out of that and arm locks Kevin Randleman. So
shut the fuck up. He ate that?
He ate it and arm locked Kevin Randleman literally
Brian
within
Fedor
like.
was
Holy
another
shit.
being.
So, when you think about devastating events like that, was an event where watching it, you're like, how did this guy not break his neck? And not only did he not break his neck, but he literally like continued the fight, and literally within a few seconds after that happened, finished the fight, submitting Randleman. So, that's the thing is like, man, like that, literally that same situation, which the black belt mentioned, he's done it hundreds of times, can happen hundreds of times and nothing bad will happen. And then one time it happens because maybe someone's specific body type, because of the angle they have on their head, maybe.
Well, maybe he had a pre-existing injury or something going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
There were a lot
it's
of
a
inaccuracies, it seemed like, from an outside perspective about the whole thing. The spike on his head, when I first saw it, it was described as a student in, like, it was either first class or very, very early on with no
was the
grappling
narrative.
experience.
Right.
Yeah, that was the narrative for sure.
And then come to find out, and again, I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I think experience on the mat does matter for something. The guy had been in multiple competitions. He had been a student at the gym for quite some time, I believe.
I think he was visiting, but I believe he was trained at Barry Yoshida's is what I read. I think he'd been training for 3+ years. He competed in 2 pans. There's actually a video I saw that Tom DeBlas posted, and not that it's relevant to this, but it kind of is, I guess. He got DQ'd at a Pan Am's for suplexing a guy.
I just think the language is very important.
Yeah.
And when you say head spike, brand new student, like all of those things can really flavor the way somebody views it. And I think it could turn a lot of people. It's like, oh, hey, so this is what might happen the first time I come to a class.
and that's
like people are like, fuck this.
So that's my concern, and that's why I asked Henry, he's been training far longer than I have, what he's ever seen, because I don't want people who've never trained to be like, well, cool, I don't care about the lawsuit. I don't want to get my neck broken, so I'm never coming to try jiu-jitsu.
I've coached thousands and thousands and thousands of students from all over the world, everywhere you can imagine, all different countries where I've done camps, events. People from all over the world have flown in to train with me at Rickson's, with me at Dynamics, at my camps, and I've never, ever had or seen something like that happen.
What is the worst injury you've seen happen in your time on the mats?
I've
Not
seen-
necessarily that you were involved in, but you just happened to be around
Yeah,
and see.
I've seen pretty bad compound fractures of people's arms.
From arm bars?
Hyperextension, I don't think is that bad. I've seen people get their elbows hyperextended, and a lot of times people just eat it, But I've seen actually like someone get put in a bicep slicer and try to pull their arm out, and their arm went to here and it snapped their forearm in half. I've seen people's shins get snapped, like people going for and this is on video, not that forearm break was the only thing that I've seen live. That was pretty catastrophic, and of course they're in a cast for a while. I've seen people's shoulders get jacked from Kimuras, Americanas that are unwilling to tap. But for me overall, I think jiu-jitsu, the way that it's trained, because we do train it and we do compete usually 100%, in the grand scheme of things is very, very safe. When you think about what we're doing on a daily basis, we're trying to bend people's joints. We're teaching how to put people in compromised positions and bend their joints the way that they're not supposed to bend. Overall, I've been doing it for 28 years, and I have had one surgery from a jiu-jitsu related injury,
What's the worst
which is a
injury you've
knee
seen?
meniscus.
Never honestly anything that bad. I've seen some shoulder dislocations. We had a student for a while that just, his shoulder would about once a month dislocate and he could pop it back in. We had one guy we took to the hospital for a shoulder dislocation. They popped it back in. He still trains. The worst injuries I've seen at these camps all happen outside of the training. Our friend Will Hill hurt his leg pretty bad when we were in Thailand, but I was with him. It was on a diving thing, and he kicked a propeller snorkeling, basically. But
Well, you watch that guy getting out of a boat and just get laid flatline by a wave too, and then just go float.
and blew out something about his phone's not working anymore. That's what happens when you're buying cheap phones.
That's
right?
a story for a different podcast on a different day. It might have been Henry in the surf lane.
But yeah,
flat.
you know, I teach when I'm home. I teach
After a sunset cruise with unlimited open bar.
I teach 7 days a week. You know, I do a camp down here. We're doing the Ireland camp. I teach, you know, some seminars. I never have seen too much. I mean, I've seen some people where they're like, hey, you know, my arm's really bugging me. A computer programmer that works for me is a purple belt 4 or 5 years ago. His forearm, he got caught also in a bicep slicer. And then in between rounds, he was like hitting the heavy bag. It's like, man, my arm really hurts. I'm not going to roll anymore. Went home that night. The next day, he's like, it's still really hurting. I'm going to go to the doctor. And he had fractures in both bones.
I mean, we're not playing golf or doing synchronized swimming, right?
Well, but think about it too. I mean, ask a basketball coach how many ACLs he's seen blown out or whatever
Ankles, all sorts of stuff. So here's the real question for you. So, and I asked this, I've met Henry one time. He was super gracious. I had him on the podcast. He invited us into his facility, which is fucking beautiful in Torrance.
Yeah.
Super nice guy. The only experience I've had with him, it was super positive. Do you think the way that he has talked about what happened and his involvement in it has helped or hurt?
Helped or hurt what?
Kind of jiu-jitsu in general.
I think it's hurt jiu-jitsu in general. I don't see, and I don't see anything positive for jiu-jitsu out of it right now. You know, I don't, and you and I talked about this offline, but you know, a lot of people posting about the money involved in the case, whether it's the judgment or what he got paid. That's just court stuff, and expert witnesses get paid lots of money, and that's fine. But
And I'm sure the defense had an expert witness as well, you know?
Yeah, they had Clark Gracie. You know, I don't think nobody's going to start training because of this. I've heard about a lot of gym owners like we talked about. I mean, maybe that's the positive, right? Maybe the positive spin is, hey, gym owners are going to have their liability waivers reviewed. They're going to make sure they have proper insurance in place, stuff like that. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, my initial thing is that I think a lot of gym owners and a lot of martial arts schools, jiu-jitsu schools, got thrown under the bus. You know, their whole philosophy is to spread jiu-jitsu. I mean, their grandfather's philosophy was to spread jiu-jitsu throughout the world. And just because this case has set a precedent, there's a lot of attorneys that are willing to take cases pro bono now because they know that
money on the back end.
Based, or just like, hey, I'll take the case and I'll just get paid if we win, because the case has set a precedent, right? Like 46 million for an injury, which is, you know, thank God. I heard he's able to walk, and
I think he's recovered some level of quality of life. Who knows how much?
I think that's another pretty negative thing too. Is I've heard from someone that I had mentioned before knew him, that this guy had a website, like paraplegic to peaks or something, because he started climbing mountains and doing stuff and worked very hard to regain it. I think he's gotten a lot of really unneeded and unfair hate. I mean, all he did was, he sued, which makes sense. I mean, he had that happen to him. He had significant medical bills, whatever, but I don't think he's in any way done anything dishonest or deserves any hate from the jiu-jitsu, you know, world.
The judgment, I mean, obviously the judgment is that amount of money is
well, it's going to get appealed, and
sure. We'll see how, I mean, of course, that's the court process. We'll see how it finally ends up. But, you know, there's a judgment like that, it does set a type of precedent where now.
Do you worry about traveling students coming in now more than before?
We've always made visiting students sign waivers. We're pretty good about that. And
Yeah.
Mark, who runs my gym for me, I mean, he's on top of that. If somebody comes in, they're not stepping foot on the mat unless they've signed.
Even if
waiver.
you do have your waiver redone and it's bulletproof as a waiver, because there's a fucking skydiving waiver too. Guess what happens when people die skydiving? They get sued.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it comes back to whether or not there was gross negligence. I think that will pierce the veil of a waiver a lot of time. But even if you have a bulletproof one, because of that precedence or just the visibility of that incident, does it worry you at all about letting
Everything about it worries me because from my standpoint, jiu-jitsu is not by any means my primary source of income for me. It's something I love to do. The school does well. We have full-time employees, but like I said, I'm in the hospitality industry. I don't want to torpedo my entire life because somebody gets a judgment that exceeds, what the insurance will cover. And I'm not well versed in that either. I don't, fully understand that. I don't believe it can pierce outside of the corporation, but that's still the kind of stuff you think about and worry about. And when we get back, that's the meetings I'm setting up to find out exactly what my exposure on stuff is. And some of these guys, and this guy in particular, I think the gym is his life. So ultimately, he's not going to be able to pay that, whatever the settlement ends up being. So he's probably going to lose his gym, I would imagine.
I was going to say, I wonder if it means the gym goes under. I don't know how that works. If you have a massive settlement like that, say it does go through, I don't know what that means. It's like,
beyond
cool,
my comprehension. I don't.
sold everything I own. I'll write you an IOU for $4,900,000. Like,
Right.
fuck.
Yeah. I'm not sure either. I'm not sure if it's the business, if it's personal, if you can go after someone's personal assets.
Well, I don't know if insurance
also,
steps in and
insurance-
says you didn't get the waiver done properly, so because
now
you didn't have it, we're not covering
insuring
it.
you. Oh, fuck.
Because he was personally named in the lawsuit, from what I read, which is unusual. It would normally be the corporation.
Yeah, I don't know how any of that stuff works. I do know now, though, that a lot of people who don't know shit about jiu-jitsu like to comment about jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I know that now.
A lot of people
some of the comments out there, I'm like, I don't think you've ever actually tried this.
well, yeah, and it's interesting the amount of people that are like, oh, that was he was trying to hurt him. He did this thing, and again, I've never even attempted that back take.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have or you.
I've
have.
had so many people try to do it on me, and sometimes it
What
works.
is it? Are
Most
you
of the time
trying to
it
go
doesn't.
forward? Like you're trying to pull them over
you basically jump, pull them forward. They end up rolling over their shoulder because people are balled up, and so they don't have a lot of base. And so basically, you throw your weight, and because you're attached to them, you basically end up pulling them over, and it opens up opportunities because as they get pulled over, their elbows and knees separate, and there's room to throw hooks in. So it's
Leo Vera is the one who made it famous, right?
yeah. I'm not
Well,
sure
I'm
who
not
made
so
it
sure
famous,
anymore.
but I had so many guys.
I think the instructor now might have made it famous.
Yeah, he's got more clicks.
He might be a little bit more famous at this point in time.
More famous for not completing
not
it.
Holy fuck.
yeah, not doing it.
Yeah, you can tell.
Nobody's going to be that move is not going to be tried in jiu-jitsu anymore. He's famous for erasing that move.
There's like the 5 rules up at the Kalispell gym. It's like, one is don't roll rough, follow, no sideline coaching, and there's gonna be like handwritten 6. Don't do whatever the fuck the
rolling
name of that
back
move.
takes.
Yeah, whatever the name. Well,
Jumping, rolling back.
rolling back take. Yeah, I didn't recognize the move, but you can tell like when the guy's head kind of did spit out and he was face down. You're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Well, you can see in the video.
When
like,
you see him flop, and
yeah,
he's not
you're like,
moving,
oh,
you're just like,
fuck.
that was bad. Yeah.
Then it makes me wonder, like, because I go to a chiropractor sometimes. I'm like, how close am I to that happening to me on the chiropractor table?
Well, that's the concern, right? That's
I mean, because like you said, you've had it done to you hundreds of times. You've
Attempted.
That guy, yeah, I'm sure it was attempted. Somehow he ended
you
up.
ever see any jiu-jitsu work on him?
I am yet to see any jiu-jitsu work on him, which is frustrating.
They usually just end up jumping over me and then falling on their back with me on top of them is how it normally happens.
I've never tried any move on you that doesn't end with you on top of me and me on my back.
I actually don't know if I have either. Yeah, the
I like
last
being
time we
on
rolled,
top.
you're like, hey, you want to move around a bit? You can start on top, and I ended up very rapidly on my back with you on top of me. So yeah, I've not tried a single move that doesn't terminate that.
Power top, not power bottom.
How long into your jiu-jitsu journey were you kind of able to do that to people and just kind of hold position at will? 8 years? 10 years?
Definitely by the time I got my black belt. Once I got my black belt, you know, I always tell people like that incident that was kind of life-changing for me, watching Rickson just completely dominate another world champion black belt, you know, with his using weight distribution and being heavy on top and how to do it. And so I literally spent 10 years just learning how to be heavy and relax and how to allow people to move underneath me but carry my weight. And so
did he move rapidly? I have not watched a lot of video of him rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Did
I don't
he?
think there is that much, is there?
There's not that much because like when he was really competing was in the 80s, early, maybe early like 90, right?
The stuff I've seen is like from VHS tapes.
Yeah, but like by like the 90s, like you'll see footage of him. Have you ever seen the Gracie in action?
Yeah.
Maybe a
Where he's
little
fighting
bit.
the guy
he did
on the beach.
challenge matches. There's some challenge matches. There's some footage of him there. There's some old footage of him competing in tournaments. But that was when he was really much younger. And that's the other thing too is there's his jiu-jitsu improved so much. Like every year, he was getting better and changing things. And so that's what's sad is nowadays everyone has cell phones. Right, but back then nobody had cell phones, so like we were recording stuff with giant VHS. Put a giant VHS tape into a VHS recorder.
I've got some matches on Flow. I'd probably wish they didn't record.
to record, you know.
But you know what I mean? Like the people who move really quick but they look frantic versus the ones who are very calculated and it almost seems like they're in slow motion. I would guess he was the latter and not the frantic pace.
Earlier years, he had a much higher, faster pace. Later years, it was just positional dominance. Like literally everything you move, it just gets worse and worse and worse, you know? And he even said, you know, we had this conversation when he was already mid 40s. He said, Henry, he said, I would literally kill my like the 25-year-old version of myself when he was already like world champion level black belt, dominating everyone. At 44, he said he would destroy that version of himself because his technique is just so much more precise. He said when he was younger, he would make so many mistakes, but because of his pace and because he never got tired, he was always able to recover. At the later age, he just didn't make any mistakes anymore.
When I heard some story that when Crone was at his peak and winning everything, they went at it for real. And
yeah, I think Crone said it on Joe Rogan. He was like, you know, this is after Crone was already giving like Marcelo Garcia, you know, some of the toughest matches Marcelo's ever had, and he was like, "Dad," and
thought it was time to take the old man off the mantle.
In his 50s, right? Like, "Dad, let's go." And Rickson's like, "Okay." He hasn't been training much. He's, you know, injured. He's got all these busted up, herniated discs, blown out ankle, bad hip, bad shoulder, and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes," and basically, boom, tapped him out. You know.
Your story, I think yesterday, where you're talking about you were getting ready for your purple belt competition, you're like, it was fucking amazing. There's like 50 people watching. I'm getting out of everything. I'm the man. I go win the tournament. He's like, hey, give me 5 more and just.
Yeah. It was like, oh, just when I thought I was getting good, then it was just like, nope.
Did he say anything or just roll with you and then just fucking walk?
He just rolled with me and literally like, I don't even know if he knew how big my head got after that roll because I had so many people coming up to me afterwards, like, just was like, dude, like that was amazing, like, man, we saw it, and I was just like, like my head was getting so
I'm the
big.
man.
I was like, fucking, and literally, you know, that's why I always tell people belts don't mean shit. Like literally, 3 weeks later, I get promoted. I'm a brown belt, and we rolled again, and within 5 minutes. Not only did he tap me out 5 times in 5 minutes, he tapped me out 5 times in 5 minutes with the exact same thing over and over again. And I'm just like, what the hell?
People hear that who don't do jiu-jitsu like, well, why is that a big deal? Like, yeah. It's like, no, it's fucking irritating.
Because after the second time, you know what's coming and there's nothing you can do. So imagine being completely helpless against another human being when you've been training for 8 years and you're physically as big, as strong, you know, pretty tough by most people's standards. And then there's human beings in the world that can make you feel completely helpless and do what they want with you. and there's nothing you can do about it.
Wouldn't that be total mastery? Like both people know what one wants to have happen, and the other one's like, I'm going to do everything I can to stop you, but you're still going to do it.
Well, that's
like
the
total
thing.
mastery.
That's guys that there's certain individuals that get to that level where they can tell you what they're going to do, and no matter what, you can't stop it. And I think that is when you reach that level of mastery. And the other thing too is like so efficient with his movement, right? So efficient where you can literally dominate another human being without breaking a sweat. And the other person is fighting and trying as hard as they can to prevent you from doing that thing. And there's nothing you can do. It's like the most helpless feeling in the world. And it's
I don't think we're ever going to get there, Dan. I've given up. I'd say I'd try, but it's like, I don't think I started early enough to get to that point.
Well, the crazy thing is, like, you know, by training with him for so many years, like one of the things that was huge for me is like, I know it's possible to get to that level because I've seen someone do it. I've seen it. So that was like, okay, there's proof, right? It is possible to get to this level where you can train with a guy that's 15 years younger, the current world champion, and tap them out 5 times in a row without even breaking a sweat. And so then it just became like, now how do you train yourself so that that's possible, right? And because he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the strongest, and by his 40s, he definitely wasn't the most athletic, like physical. You know, already by that time, some injuries had started to build up, injuries started to accumulate. He wasn't training as much or as hard, but
he lived a tough 40 years up to that point.
Yeah, it was all technique. I mean, he was representing the family.
Do you remember in your time training with him, or was there even anybody who gave him a good run for the money?
There were times where there were fast-paced matches that were back and forth, but I never saw anyone get close to finishing him. Like, I never saw him panic or get into a position or situation where like, oh shit, he might get finished, or oh shit, he might, like, this might be it. I never saw that. But that's
How old was he when you started training with him?
36.
And you were what age?
I was 20.
Fuck. I see some of these
35,
kids now.
Yeah, he was 35, 36, and I was 20.
Even fucking Tyler, you know, starting at 17. You know, like, or people whose parents own gyms and it's like they grow up on the mats. I'm like, you motherfuckers.
That's what I always tell people. I said, they say, you have any regrets? I said, the only thing I regret, like jiu-jitsu wise, is I didn't start sooner. I wish I would have.
I don't know how you would have, though. You would have had to, because you came,
Was there anything in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I was going to say, you came from the middle of nowhere.
I mean, it's a huge wrestling state.
Yeah.
It's a huge, they have really, there's decent judo because of the wrestling. So there is great grappling there. But, and people always ask me, do you regret not wrestling? And definitely pros and cons.
Yeah.
You know, I think wrestling definitely teaches some skill sets, some great skill sets, but I think there's definitely certain things that I would have to unlearn, specific habits that I would have to unlearn.
I think
from
kids
wrestling
that do jiu-jitsu and then also wrestle can get that right away, but I mean, you've seen it. I have some guys, some upper belts that were wrestlers. They still have bad habits that I'm constantly trying to correct after 7, 8, 9 years of training.
Yeah.
Leah said, too, starting too young can be a double-edged sword because they'll burn out sometimes in their early teens. So they could have that crazy trajectory, but then these things called hormones kick in.
Yeah.
Social, you know.
Especially if their parents are pushing them to train.
Yeah, and so like they'll have this arc that's insane. And she said it's about, I think she said it was either about 50-50 or only about 30% actually will stay that course. Because that's what she said, the balance is getting them to continue to go and getting them to want to go on their own as opposed to feeling like they have to go there because it's the parent that's forcing them to do so.
You know what's crazy that I think about it nowadays too is besides just having exposure to it at a young age, there's so much information available. Like there's more information available about jiu-jitsu and the techniques and how to do things online. Now people have more access than ever before in history to knowledge from the best coaches in the world. All of the best coaches in the world pretty much have instructional stuff online. So even if you start later, like you have all the answers basically in the palm of your hand to any problem that you encounter in jiu-jitsu. So
Applying that in real time is the problem.
Well, I was going to say
You can have the most robust,
but that's a double-edged sword
BJJ
too, 'cause-
fanatics, dossier. Doesn't mean you can do all that shit at the right time.
Well, but also there's a bunch of phenomenal world-class guys that have stuff. There's also a bunch of stuff out there that's horrible. So like as a white belt or blue belt, people that are surfing the internet doing stuff. I mean, I have students all the time. I'm like, what did you just try to do? Oh, well, I saw this video from so-and-so. Well, I'm not going to tell you can't do it, but here's what I think about it and why maybe that's not the best thing to do.
Leah was talking to Denver yesterday. He tried something. She goes, who the fuck taught you that? He was quiet for a second. He goes,
Instagram.
yeah, he goes, the internet. He's just trying shit out.
I had like a 45-year-old white belt in the morning class the other day who's not flexible, try to put me in a rubber guard. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I saw this guy on the internet. I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to lose your knee.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about this though. I had to move 1,500 miles away from my home, leave my family, leave all my friends behind to be able to learn jiu-jitsu. Right? Nowadays,
Yeah, I don't know if you would have been able to start. I mean, you could have gotten into grappling, but I don't know if you'd have been able to start jiu-jitsu maybe a few years if you'd have left when you were 18 or 17 if your parents would have let you. But
yeah.
I mean, I didn't start training till like 2010 or 11, and I remember there was one purple belt who would drop in, and he was like a demigod. Even back then. Now you throw a rock anywhere, you can hit a black belt.
yeah, it seems that way sometimes for sure.
And there's schools everywhere. I mean, even in my little community out in Woodstock, Illinois, I mean, the greater McHenry County, there's 5 or 6 jiu-jitsu schools.
Henry, where can people train with you if they can't swing like a 2-day seminar or a camp? Do you?
Nowhere.
I mean, is that the answer? Sometimes I think that should be the answer. Sometimes,
Yeah.
honestly, like, do you do privates at all for unknown people?
Nope. Privates is such a personal thing. So I'm really selective with who I will invest my time in, especially that way, because when I do privates, basically it's I'm a pretty inexpensive prostitute. I'm renting my body to that person, and for me, when I do privates, I prefer to do it with myself, not with an uke. Some people do it with an uke, but for me, and as you know, it's so important that I feel what you're doing, and I can make those adjustments and corrections for you real time. Like, hey, no, I don't feel this, I don't feel that. Sometimes when you're doing a technique on someone, they might give you a response like, oh yeah, that feels like you're doing it right, when it's completely off. Or, oh, people will tap. I see people tap all the time because they're uncomfortable. Not because the technique is working, or not because the submission is proper, but just because they're uncomfortable or they're afraid to get hurt. So when I do privates, man, I really invest a lot of time and energy into that student. And so I'm just, nowadays I'm just very, very selective with who I choose to invest my time in, and who I will allow to, who I'm going to train.
I don't know if it was a joke, but you posted the other day that you're doing a select amount of privates.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do very many privates, and I did post that I was doing some. I mean, most my students I don't normally do privates with. I mean, we are not a big academy, 125 students. I don't want to take their money and do that, and the time commitment. I mean, an hour private's not an hour. You're going to be there early, get ready, stretch. Sure. You're going to hang out, talk to people afterwards and whatever. But yeah, I did put up that I've got some slots open in some time in the next couple months that I will do some privates.
How do people get a hold of you for that?
Instagram, Dan_T_Hart, or danhartjiujitsu.com.
Or get your ass to Woodstock, what's the hell the name of the movie, The Groundhog?
The Groundhog Day.
Fuck, I should remember that. It's Groundhog Day. It's the actual square. I don't think they're still using the actual groundhog.
There's some groundhog that comes out, though, on Groundhog Day.
And apparently it's a big deal.
Leah's next seminar we are doing so that you guys can come experience Groundhog Day. And Henry has a seminar that sold out 24 hours after we put it up. So if you want to visit him at my school when we put it up, you usually have about 48 hours to get signed up. Our mat space is smaller, so we limit it to 25 paid signups. And when they're gone, they're gone. One of my white belts, I was talking to him in the sauna. He's like, I really want to come to see your coach's seminar. I'm like, cool, man, sign up tonight. He's like, all right. Then the next evening I saw him, he's like, well, I didn't know you were serious. It was really going to sell out that fast.
Yeah. He'll be looking at you through the glass.
So people want to come to one of my seminars because I'm
those are more frequent for sure, it seems.
Yeah. And it's definitely seasonal. Usually during the fall and the spring is when I'm traveling a lot teaching. Hidden Jiu-Jitsu camps. So I post, hiddenjiu-jitsucamps.com is where they can find information about my camps. I post a lot of my seminars, but also on Facebook and Instagram. So Henry Akins BJJ is my Instagram, and just Henry Akins on Facebook. So that's where I post all the information about my upcoming seminars.
But then you also have the website if people can't make it out.
Yeah. So all of the information, so all of my seminars and camps I record, and all that footage is available on hiddenjiu-jitsu.com. So
Dan's a good marketer for you.
yeah, I appreciate it because I'm
He's just
terrible
like,
at it.
he's like, here's the softball.
The hype man.
Yeah, people can't see how awesome this is. We got to spit back up for sunset before the ladies kill us. But so you missed this camp because you're a dumbass. For those of you listening who aren't here, however, Costa Rica, December, right? It is on for this
Yep.
year, so you could go. Is it sold out already?
No, I've got 3 spots left for my camp, so December 1st to the...
That's not going to last long. If you want to come to Tamarindo and hang out with us in December, 3 people have the chance to do so. Yeah. And where's it? Hero BJJ? Is that where
Yeah,
they sign up?
herobjj.com. You can sign up for my camp through that.
Yeah, and there's good information about the gym there too, because the Hero BJJ, or listen to one of the previous podcasts that we've done.
We've talked about it a bunch,
Yeah.
501(c) or whatever. So
Yep.
all the camps, including Henry's, raise a bunch of money to help out the local kids. So come down, have a vacation, help some local kids. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'll let you close it out, Henry. Closing thoughts on jiu-jitsu in general, or life, or both.
Closing thoughts on jiu-jitsu is my Sedona camp is going to be pretty awesome.
Does it come with a bottle of wine?
Blue belts and up. Oh, we're doing
Blue belts
wine
and up. That's
tasting.
fucking racist.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're going the other way. No white allowed.
You should go like no black belts, only white belts.
Only white belts. Yeah, so it's gonna be awesome. But
Can Denver and Erica still come?
we'll see. We'll see. I might have to surprise belt them before then.
Okay, Sedona it is then. Awesome. Thank you guys.
All right, thank
Awesome.
you.